A man is not born cold-hearted. He is not callous. He is not emotionally unavailable for no reason. I actually think men are far more romantic than women are. But then something happens to us, and we become cold-hearted. Let's start with heartbreak. This is probably the most common reason that men become cold-hearted. You see, the male fantasy is something like angelic-like woman, immortal elvish woman, or princess, falling in love with a flawed mortal man, or a commoner. Beren and Lúthien, written by Tolkien, is a love story of an immortal elvish princess who gives her love to a mortal man, forsaking her immortality. And Aladdin is a story where a common street rat falls in love with a princess, and she loves him for him, not because he becomes a fake prince. These stories tell you everything you need to know about how us men view women, and how we start out before we become cold-hearted. We literally view women as goddesses, and we fantasize about you, this perfect angelic being, falling in love with us despite all of our flaws. Now here's the problem. The more we learn about female nature, the more this fantasy erodes. We think of women as these kind, caring, loving beings. But what happens when that ideal is shattered? When a man gets cheated on? When a man gives all of his love and gets ghosted completely out of the blue without warning? What happens when a man really likes a woman? He goes on a few dates with her, only to find out that she's dating 5 other guys. What happens when we as men want to treat a woman like a princess, like a queen, only to find out that she's slept with 50 other men? All of this completely shatters our understanding of women. It destroys the male fantasy, and we lose this idea of romanticism, and we become cold-hearted. Imagine loving and trusting in someone, giving all your love to that person, only to find out that they're cheating on you. Don't you think that that's going to radicalize someone, and that's going to make them cold-hearted? Another big issue with relationships today is that marriage is no longer desired by most women, and most marriages end in divorce. In fact, more than half of marriages end in divorce. It's so sad. I mean, really, what the fuck happened? So if you're a guy in your 20s, maybe you haven't experienced this yet, but you've certainly seen it. And you've seen what happened to previous generations of men. They go to work to provide for their family, slaving away. And then the wife gets bored, becomes ungrateful because the man isn't spending enough time with her. And then she starts cheating on him while he's at work, out there providing for his family. And the cherry on top? When she inevitably divorces him, she gets half of his stuff. It's really a rotten deal for us men. Again, if you're a younger guy, this probably hasn't happened to you, but you've seen it happen, and that is still enough to radicalize you and become cold-hearted. And listen, that's a very niche example, but stuff like that does happen. And when things like this happen enough to a lot of guys, you get a whole generation of cold-hearted, radicalized men that have had only negative experiences with women. A part of becoming cold-hearted as a man is to create this outer shell that is there to kind of defend against future pain and future heartbreak. So if a man gets heartbroken once, he typically has 2 responses. He either renounces women altogether, he wants nothing to do with them, and he's just going to focus on himself, or he becomes like a womanizer. He gives up on the idea of love, and he just plays the modern game as it is. He just goes for hookups, one-night stands, and nothing more. And something like this happens to every man, and it's not always heartbreak. Maybe it's the death of a loved one, maybe it's addiction, or maybe it's the realization of the cruelty of this world and the contempt that modern society holds towards men. It's some traumatic event where you're dragged down into the abyss and you become forever changed. You become cold-hearted. The question I ask myself is whether or not this is a bug or a feature. In other words, is this a tragic side effect of modernity and feminism, or is this an essential experience to go from a boy to a man? I'm not really sure, but either way, it leaves men cold-hearted. It leaves men emotionally unavailable, and it often leads men with a resentment towards women. Combine all of this together, and now we live in a world where men and women hold more contempt for each other than ever before. Not so good.